Good morning, everyone. Today is the 14th of October, Tuesday morning. Running a little bit behind. I took Rosette and Mark to breakfast this morning. I have a question for you, and that is it peace or the Prince of Peace? Is it peace or the Prince of Peace? 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as a travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Did you hear that, Donald Trump? When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as a travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. No, I do not want to be a member of Trump's peace board. I don't want to be a member of his peace board. A lot of people are crying peace, peace, peace in the Middle East. You know, Jeremiah 8:11. They have healed the hurt of my daughter, my people slightly, saying peace, peace, when there is no peace. Deception, crying peace. Signing a peace among all these different nations. You're right. They say, well, Trump's a peacemaker. The Bible says that we should. Do you want to sign a covenant with a nation that absolutely hates Jesus Christ? Do you want to sign a peace treaty with a nation that calls their God Allah, and then say you're worshiping the same God as they're worshiping? Matthew 10:34. Think not that I came to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. You know, there's not going to be any peace on this earth until the Prince of Peace comes to rule and reign. That's the only time there's going to be peace. Ezekiel 13:10. Because they have seduced my people, saying peace, and there was no peace. And one built up a wall. Does that sound familiar? Do you think that a wall is going to keep the United States in peace? They have seduced my people, saying peace, there was no peace, and one built up a wall and daubed it with untempered mortar. What's the untempered mortar? Worshipping a false Christ. Worshipping the God of Charlie Kirk. Worshipping the universal God. Worshipping the God of Norman Vincent Peale, which, by the way, was Trump's mentor. You know, who said he found his God in a Buddhist temple. Well, Isaiah 59:8. The way of peace they know not, where is no judgment in their goings. They have made them crooked paths. Whosoever goeth therein shall not know peace. You know, they're not proclaiming the Prince of Peace. They're proclaiming a false God. They're proclaiming the God of Allah and the God of those who detest Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the state of Israel. You know, Isaiah 57:21. There is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked. The wicked are those who've rejected Jesus Christ. I had a social worker I worked with who was Reformed Jew, and she said every time that Jesus Christ was mentioned, they spit on the synagogue floor. That's how much they hate Jesus Christ. Romans 3:17, the way of peace have they not known. It isn't true peace to worship a false god and to sign a covenant with those that are involved in worshiping false gods. That's not a true peace. Lamentation 3:17, thou hast removed my soul far off from peace. You know, the word peace is mentioned 400 times in the Bible. And oftentimes it's referred to those who are crying peace and not finding peace at all. Talk about they're going to nominate. In fact, a guy from Pakistan was advocating nominating Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Why do people want to align themselves with all of these different nations? They want to look good in the sight of people. They want to look good in men's eyes. They want to get a Nobel Peace Prize. It's about power and social prominence, you know. Well, people say, well, a man please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. That's Donald Trump, Proverbs 16:7. Well, the only problem is that Donald Trump is very, very arrogant, putting his nose up in the air, saying he's the only one that could have done what he did, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. I'm here to say that Scripture says that when they, back to 1 Thessalonians 5:3, when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. That's what it says. I don't feel more comfortable. You know, what kind of intelligent people would gather together and give 1,900 terrorists up for 10 hostages? 1,900 terrorists up for 10 hostages. And act like that was a master deal. Well, there's a big difference in proclaiming man's peace and proclaiming the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You know, there is no peace when you're dealing with reprobates. You know, when you're coming against the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, when you're crying peace, peace, and we're going to do this amongst men. I mean, Trump even invoked the name of God yesterday in his speech. You know what it reminded me of? Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Why do people rage and the people imagine a vain thing? They've set themselves against his anointed. That's what the state of Israel has done. They've shook their fists in the face of Christ and denied him. You know? Huckabee evoked that passage in Luke saying it was referring to Jerusalem. If he answered and said, they might tell you that if these hold their peace, the stones would cry out. It wasn't referring to Jerusalem. It was referring to Jesus Christ, Huckabee. You took that out of context. You know, the Lord is the one who ordains peace for us and has wrought all our works in us, Isaiah 26:12. You know, not some peace treaty amongst reprobate nations and reprobate people. Ezekiel 7:25, destruction cometh, they shall seek peace, and there shall be none. They shall seek peace, and there shall be none. Well, that's my thoughts this morning about all of this hoopla over this peace treaty with Hamas. You know, how can you have a peace treaty with people that are absolute reprobates and expect them to honor it? You know, they're just waiting for another chance to come in and do the same thing all over again. That's what they're waiting for. And so I would say this to God's people: don't get sucked in by all the lies. Don't get sucked in by all of them. You know, and like I said, I don't have any desire to be a part of Trump's peace board. Okay. Jeremiah 2:12, the spoilers are come upon all high places through the wilderness, for the sword of the Lord shall devour from the one end of the land even to the other and end of the land. No flesh shall have peace. So the more they cry peace, the quicker destruction's coming. That's my take on the whole situation. May the good Lord be with you today is my prayer, and let us realize that our only hope is in the Prince of Peace, not in some treaty orchestrated by reprobates. God bless.